I am literally filming this video on the day that she released Good Riddance, and y'all, it's so amazing. Obviously, it is way too early to even think about me having like actual coherent thoughts on the album as a whole, but I can say that the last song, The Best, that one is an early favorite. So in honor of Gracie's amazing achievement, I wanted to give you 5 book recommendations that I think you would really like if you're into Gracie's music and just her overall songwriting style. First up, we have actually my favorite book from last year, so it's not like I'm biased or anything. That is Letters to the Lost by Brigid Kemmerer. This book is so Gracie coded, it is literally not even funny. Mainly, it makes me think of the lyrics from Mess It Up. This story is about 2 people, Juliet and Declan, and they're both kind of reeling from family tragedy. They both had like a death in the family recently. That's another thing that makes me like really think of Gracie Abrams when I think of this book, because she talks about her family so much, and particularly like the ways that she kind of feels like she's losing her family as she's like growing up and getting older and moving out of the house. So I think that like overarching theme in her music really fits for this. But specifically with Mess It Up, the reason that song works so well for this book is that both of our main characters feel like they've kind of let their families down in a way, or their perception of their family is changing now that they've had this tragedy in their lives. For Declan, he lost his sister in a car accident and basically has not been able to let the guilt of that go because he was in the car, he was driving the car. He kind of feels like his mom has just kind of left him behind to sort of start this new family with this new guy, but also doesn't really feel like he deserves to be included in this new family they're building because he feels so guilty about the accident. So I'm reading the lyrics, and when it says, "How could I think that all that I gave you was enough? Every time I get too close, I just go mess it up." Like, that is so Declan. Then we have Juliet, and Juliet has lost her mom, also in a car accident actually. Nobody else was like in the car with her, so it's not so much the guilt that Juliet is having to deal with in that sense. It's more like she feels like she has unfinished business with her mom, because her mom was a photographer, and so she was like constantly on the road, going to different places in the world and taking photographs for work. So Juliet has basically been visiting her grave and leaving her letters, because she and her mom used to write letters, and that was like how they kept up with each other. And so the meet cute in this book is so Vampire Diaries, because literally they meet in a cemetery. When Juliet leaves one of her letters with her mom's like tombstone, Declan, who is doing community service as like the cemetery groundskeeper, he finds the letter and reads it, doesn't know like who left it or anything, and he like writes a response and leaves it for Juliet, who comes back and finds it later. So like they don't even really meet each other for a very long time. They start off by writing these letters and leaving them at the cemetery, and then it turns into emails, and it's like very You've Got Mail, but more of a like angsty teen version of that. But like, I swear it's good. Like, I know that some people have issues with that particular trope, like the letter sending like email trope, but this is a really good version of it. Okay, next I actually wanted to give you a classic book recommendation, and this one is really good if you are wanting to get into classics but you're a little intimidated by like the chunkier ones, because this one's a play, so it's super short. It is called Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. This one came to mind specifically when I was listening to Block Me Out, because okay, first of all, that song is like the theme song to Intrusive Thinking. And if I had to summarize this play, it literally, the whole premise is just like this man having a massive nervous breakdown. He's kind of like completely lost perception of time. So parts of the play are set in present time with what's really happening. And then parts are kind of like his memories that are sort of washing over him, and it's kind of like this weird sort of haunting, like ghostly, I don't know, almost like apparitions of people from his past and mistakes that he has made. So when Gracie says, "I think I'm burning alive, but nobody sees the fire, because when I open my mouth, I seem to be stuck in silence," like that is literally exactly what's happening to this man. It's just, it's so heartbreaking, but it's so poignant too. It's a little bit rough around the edges. There's definitely a bit of harsh language, so like if that's not your thing, like just be aware of that, but it is really, really moving. Okay, so I'm going to admit something. This next book was so sad, I didn't even finish it. And that is You've Reached Sam. I definitely hold Dustin Thao personally responsible for the heartache that I went through in attempting to read this book, because wow, it is sad. But it's so good too. And isn't that why we listen to Gracie? I heard a little snippet of a Gracie song on TikTok the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so catchy, that's so amazing. And when I looked into it and tried to figure out what it was called, I realized it's unreleased. I think the fans have kind of called it Close to You, or maybe she called it that and just like never gave us the full song. I don't know what the backstory is there, but it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, I don't have it. The very little lyrics that we do get are basically just saying like, I would wreck my whole entire life just to be able to like spend some time with you. And that is literally what is happening in You've Reached Sam. So this book is basically about this girl named Julie, and her boyfriend Sam has recently passed away. She misses him so much. They had all these plans. They were about to graduate high school. And so one day she's just missing him so badly, and she literally just wants to hear his voice. And so she calls his phone to hear his voicemail message. And honestly, I could totally see that being something I would do, which just made this way too realistic. So rather than getting his voicemail, like Sam actually picks up the phone. It's just this weird, like kind of limbo that he's in. And I'm gonna be honest, I never found out like how this was even possible, because I only made it probably like 70 or 80% of the way through the book. That is literally like, I was a wreck trying to get through this book. And I just was like, for my own mental health, I'm putting this down. But it's basically just like the story of Julie neglecting her whole real life in order to just spend a few minutes with Sam on the phone. And so like, that's kind of the tie-in with the song. Everything else around her, the things that she like should be caring about and focusing on, she's kind of just allowed that, like school and friends and family and everything, just to kind of fall to the wayside, because she's just like so obsessed with spending time with Sam. Speaking of really sad books, this one I did finish, so I promise. It is called The Light Between Oceans. Gracie's music tends to hone in a lot on guilt and regret and like feeling kind of the heavy burden of the decisions that she's made in the past, and how she like maybe would have made different decisions, or maybe she knows in the moment that she's not making the right choice, but like she makes it anyway, like that kind of thing. And that is exactly what this book is. Actually, it starts out with a really sweet love story. It's set in Australia in, I believe, World War I. It's either World War I or World War II, but I think it's the first one. This guy who was in the Australian military has just returned home. And so he's posted on this island off the Australian coast as like the lighthouse keeper. He basically ends up falling in love with this young woman on the mainland, and they get married, and he takes her off to the island with him, and they just build this really cute, like happy little life together off on their island. It's completely deserted. It's literally just them on this island, but it's like so sweet and cute and like an introvert's paradise basically. But then when they start to try and have children, she has like, I think 3 or 4 miscarriages. Like, it is genuinely tragic. And so one day this boat washes up on the shore, and inside there is a man who is dead, but then wrapped in his arms is this little baby who is still alive. They're just so taken aback by this, and particularly the wife is like so excited. But honestly, they both are, because they both have just been like hoping and praying for children this whole time. It's like they know that they should report it to the mainland, because like obviously there could be somebody looking for this child, but they are so desperate to have a child in their lives that they decide not to. And they decide to basically start raising her as their own daughter. And it is like, you know what they're doing is wrong, but also you understand why they're doing it, and that's why it makes it like, I don't know, that's what impacted me so much. Like, there's so many layers to it. It's phenomenal. I think this list might actually end up being 6 books long because this isn't our last one, but it is the book that I'm currently reading, and that is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I love this book so much. I, like many a young female reader, have fallen in love with Jax, the Prince of Hearts. And okay, so I don't know if you listen to K-pop, but if you do, I have fan cast Jax in my head as Hyunjin from Stray Kids, and literally, like, it gives me the giggles every time I think about it. He's just so perfect for that role. He's such a drama queen, but he's also so beautiful and like kind of otherworldly looking. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? Let's get back on track. Heartbreak, loneliness, emptiness. These are kind of like the themes that I saw overlapping with this book and with Gracie's music. Obviously, lots of singers sing about heartbreak and like breaking up with people, but I feel like Gracie does such a good job of making the distinction between regular sadness and sadness that's like particularly associated with a romantic breakup, because they're very different. Like that, if you have ever experienced like a very serious breakup, then like, you know, that is a completely unique feeling to like really any other emotion that I've ever experienced anyway. You feel so empty and so alone, and that is just something that I feel like Gracie captures really, really well in her music. And so with this book, like the same thing, like it revolves around heartbreak basically, and it's not a sad book. It's a really like whimsical, fantastical, like amazing fantasy world that is very much like structured to feel like a fairy tale. So it's not like a retelling of an existing fairy tale. Like it's very much its own thing. Basically, there are these fates. I kind of picture them as like a less powerful version of like a Greek god, like in Percy Jackson, because they're all very temperamental and they all have these really amazing like powers that are like kind of unique to them. And so basically our main character Evangeline gets her heart broken because the love of her life decides to marry her stepsister. And so Evangeline goes to make a bargain with Jax, who is the fate of broken hearts. And she basically just begs him to stop this wedding. And she's like, I will do anything, like whatever you want me to do in return, I'll do it. Just please, like, give me this chance to like figure out my relationship with this guy before he gets married to my stepsister. And so he does that. But of course, as you know, going into it, it ends up being way more trouble than it was worth. And she and Jax end up going on this honestly incredible adventure. I'm almost done with it. I'm like 70% of the way through. I'm so excited to finish it and get to the next book. It's amazing. I have, in my opinion, saved the best book recommendation for last on this list, and that is If I Stay, and the sequel, Where She Went. This book is the epitome of the rock star's girlfriend aesthetic, and it is also like the cozy winter vibes of Seattle aesthetic. Basically this book about this girl named Mia, and she's in high school and she is a cellist, and it's really kind of a funny situation because her parents are both punk rockers and her dad was in a band, but then she comes along and she is like the complete opposite of them. She is like super into classical music and she's like an amazing cello player, and so she's kind of getting ready to audition to go to Juilliard. And basically she and her family end up being in this horrible car accident where both of her parents die, like pretty much immediately. And none of this is spoilers, like it happens very early on in the book. And so Mia goes into a coma where she kind of goes out of her body and can like see what's happening around her as she's in this coma. And so she's basically reflecting on her life throughout the whole story and kind of deciding whether or not she wants to keep fighting for her life or if she just kind of wants to give up. And so we're basically like traveling through her memories in her mind and just kind of like seeing what her life is like and trying to figure out what it would be like if she were to wake up. And it's so so good. But the romance of the story is between her and, ironically, another rock star. I love their dynamic so much because they're so perfect for each other and they understand each other so well, but they're so different. But he sees her practicing her cello one day at school and it's just like, it's over. He completely falls in love with her on the spot. That is a type of insta love that I will never be mad at. There's so many Gracie tie-ins for this book, but mainly I wanted to talk about I Know It Won't Work, because this song is Adam and Mia's song, especially in the sequel. So I guess slight spoiler, like if you don't want to know whether she decides to live or not, but I feel like the fact that a sequel exists tells you probably which one it is. But yeah, so basically in the sequel, they're having to like deal with the fallout of her decision in book 1. So like this whole song is basically about Gracie's relationship with someone. Something just keeps drawing her to this person and she knows it's not really good for either of them to be with each other, but she just can't help but want to be with him. Like it says, down the road, you'll love me till you resent me. Oh my gosh, that is so Adam and Mia. And the song 21, like it talks about Gracie missing somebody's 21st birthday and she thought about calling, but she wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. And Adam misses Mia's birthday at one point, like while he's on the road. And it is so heartbreaking having to watch her just like sit through her birthday dinner without him. Oh. And it all just feels very inevitable. Like literally they're just on different paths in life. And Mia's talking to her mom about it. She's like, it would be so much easier if we just weren't musicians and he wasn't on the road and I wasn't going to Juilliard and we could just go to college together. And her mom's literally like, music is the thing that you share. Like honestly, that's probably why you love each other in the first place. So it's very like paradoxical and frustrating. And that line where Gracie's just like, it's not your fault, it's just how things are, like, ugh. Okay, those are all of my recommendations for books to read if you really love Gracie Abrams. Again, let me know what you think about the new album and if there's any way I can be encouraging you or praying for you this week. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye!